Hello! In this video I'm going to show you how to use Parallax Occlusion Mapping in Unreal 4. So what we're going to do is to make a rug like this one, which I thought was a bit more of an interesting example of Parallax Occlusion Mapping than doing the typical bricks. So I'm going to show you how to set this up. I'm going to use Substance Designer to make my textures, and then I'll show you how to set up the material in Unreal 4. Okay, so before I do that, I'm just going to show you the setup in 3ds Max, so the actual rug. I'm not going to bother going through making this because it's really straightforward. What I've got though is I've got just a kind of basically a sort of chamfered box, I guess. There's no bottom on it, and the main thing is that everything's in one smoothing group. So I've got a few edges in to kind of control the smoothing and that sort of thing. The UVs are dead simple, they're just flattened, so just kind of grab everything, do a projection map, and then just relax it out like that. And obviously, because I'm in this map, I'm using light maps. So because I'm using light maps, don't want that. Because I'm using light maps, I need a second UV channel. So my second UV channel is just exactly the same as the first one, but things are kind of scaled out and squished a little bit to fill that 0 to 1 space a bit better. Okay, so that's max. Let's start making it in Substance. So I'm going to do File, use Substance. I'm going to use Physically Based Metallic and Roughness, and I will call this Rug 2. So I've already made one. I'll just reset my windows as well, so you guys can see. Reset layout. Okay, so we don't need our metallic, so I'll just delete the metallic output. The other thing I'm going to do is, I find it impossible to work in here at 256 by 256. You just can't see what's going on. So double click in empty space, and 1024 by 1024 will be enough. So just moving my output size. I'm going to go through this Substance stuff quite fast because I don't want to turn this into a Substance tutorial as such. I just want to show how the material was set up in Substance. So what I did was, we basically need to generate a height map. That's pretty much all we need from here. There is a node that worked really well for this, which was this fluid node. So if I bring that in, you can see it kind of looks like these little bubbles, and if we move them around to be a bit more random, we'll get quite a nice random sort of shaggy look to the carpet. So I'll leave that how it is for now. What I'm going to do is plug it into a make it tile patch generator. So one of these is really good for just tiling stuff up a bit and also randomizing the tiling. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring the octaves down to 2, and that'll just tile it less. So that was at 3, it's tiling like 8 by 8 or something. At 2, it's 4 by 4. The main thing I want to do is randomize the rotation. So if I do rotation variation all the way up, and then I get these patches pointing in different directions. The other thing I want to do is bring my size variation right up. So I've got some small and some big. And now I just need to kind of make it blend together. So I've got these dark patches. If I bring up the mask precision, that should help with that. And I might just bring up the height a little as well. I'm going to bring that down a bit so that these blend together better. There we go, something like that. In fact, I might leave that 3 octaves so we've got a bit more variation like that. Right, so to see what I'm doing, I'm just going to make a normal node and plug this into the normal. So that goes through the normal node and into the normal. I'll just press D to dock that as well. So I can see my normal map now. What I want to do is see the actual height that's being generated from that. So if I right click and drag this into here, I can use it as a height map. Now you're going to need to make sure that your geometry is set to plain high res, and you're going to need to make sure that in materials, if you go to edit, you're going to have to bring up the tessellation factor and this scale. 10 should be plenty, and just bring the scale up until you like where it is. Okay, I'm just going to plug a uniform colour into my roughness, so I'll just make that grayscale just to get rid of the shininess so that I can sort of see what I'm doing a bit better. Okay, so generally that looks good. What I might do is just bring in some levels in here as well, and use that for my height instead. This just gives me a way of playing around with this and seeing if I like anything better. Okay, so that looks good. So that'll be my normal map done, and this will be my height map here. I don't think we particularly need a diffuse map. So we don't really need a diffuse map, but we could do with a roughness map and probably a ambient occlusion. This might actually do fine for our ambient occlusion map, but let's make a roughness map. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a bit more noise to this, and what I'm going to do is use I'll use this fur here. It'll just give me some kind of fibres and some general noise. And what I'll do is I'll copy and paste that my make it tile patch generator and put my fur into there. So my fur kind of matches up somewhat with that. In fact, I'm just going to put that through a transformation node first. And with that transformation node, I'm just going to make it a bit smaller. That's more what I'm after. Okay, so let's get blend node and let's blend our height map with this fur that we've got. And I think I'll just set that to a multiply. And maybe set it something like that. So again, there's my my height map. This is going to be my roughness map. So that's going to be too extreme for a roughness map. So what I'll do is I'll take this uniform colour and I'll blend that uniform colour with this roughness. And then I can just kind of control how powerful it is from here. So my base level of roughness is going to be pretty high. Rugs aren't exactly shiny, so let's say up around 210, something like that. And then just blend a bit of that in. And I can mess around with the settings in here as well to get a bit more of that variation in there. Okay, that looks fine. So that's our roughness map. This is going to be, we're going to use this here as this one here is an ambient occlusion map and also our height map. What I'm going to do is just put those things into one file. So I'm going to put them into the red and the green channels of a texture rather than using two different textures for them. So I'll just bring in a merge, RGBA merge, and then I can put this into the red channel. I can put the roughness into the green channel, and I'll just plug them into base color there. Right, so let's export all of that. Let's save this first. So right click on the rug here, export outputs as bitmaps. I don't need my roughness because actually I put my roughness and my height map into this base color. This base color isn't actually a base color anymore either, so just ignore the fact that it's called base color. We can rename it if we want. Let's do them as targets. Unreal 4 seems to like targets the most in my experience, so let's use one of them and save all. So if we ever make any changes now, all we need to do is go up to the top here and do re-export outputs. So if I wanted to say change my levels of this a little bit, then I could just then go to the top and do re-export outputs. Okay, let's set this up in Unreal 4. So I'm going to make a new folder called Rug2, and I'm going to bring in those maps. So Rug2 base color, Rug2 normal. And let's create material. Let's call this Rug2 map. Open that up. Okay, so I'm going to need my normal map in there, and I'm going to need these textures, the height map and stuff that's in there. So what we want to do is to create a parallax occlusion map, and that's the thing that's going to make it look kind of bumpy, as though bits are sticking out and sticking in. So it looks a lot like tessellation, but it's not tessellation because this mesh isn't tessellated, so there's not loads of extra polys in here for that. It's an effect more similar to a normal map. It's like a really fancy normal map. So to get that to work, we're going to need a Parallax Occlusion Map node. I think this is new in about 4.7, 4.8, something like that. So if you are running, if for some reason you're trying to follow this video on 4.3, for example, you're probably not going to have this node. So you're going to need to download the newest version. Right. What we do then is we plug our height map into here. So our height map is in the red channel, but you can see it won't let me do that. And the reason for that is this is a texture sample. What we need is a texture object like this. So my texture object has automatically put this texture on. If it doesn't, just find Rug2 base color and select it. But it needs to be a texture object rather than a texture sample, so you'll have to find it by right clicking and going through the menu. So that's our height map. The thing is with this is that our height map was in channel, in the red channel, I think. I'll just double check that, yep. So the height map was in the red channel. We've only got one output from here, so we've got no way. What we normally do is we'd say the red channel's got the height map, so plug the red channel in. We need a way of telling it that it's in the red channel. You can do that just by bringing in a holding 4 and clicking and bringing a constant 4 vector in. So this is RGBA, and we can tell it which channel it's in. So if I set red to 1 and leave green, blue and alpha to 0, I can then plug that into this height map channel here. And this is the thing now that says, because that's got 1 in the red channel, that's telling it that it's in the red channel of there. It's a bit confusing. I don't know if it's something that Epic are planning on adding. It'd make life a lot simpler if we just plug the red channel into there. Okay, we're going to need some parameters now, so I'm going to hold down S and click, and I'm going to plug this parameter into the height ratio. The height ratio is going to be the height that this stuff pokes out at. So I've got my parameters on a different screen here, but that's me increasing the height, decreasing the height, increasing, decreasing. So we want where's my material gone? We want a parameter for that, so let's call this parameter height, and we'll plug it into height ratio. I'm going to give it a default value of 0.05, and I'm going to actually, because this is quite it's quite sensitive, the settings on this, so 0.05 is actually quite a reasonable amount of bump. I'm going to set the sliders to go from 0.0 to 0.2. That way they'll just kind of be, the sensitivity of them would be better for when we slide them up and down. Okay, the other thing we're going to need is these min steps and max steps. So let's create 2 parameters called 1 min steps. Then I'm going to set the default of that to be 8, and let's have max steps. And I'm going to set the default value of that to be 64. So these settings change how kind of accurate that displacement or the look of that displacement is. And the min steps and the max steps, they are basically, one is for when you're looking down, straight down like this, and the other one is for when you're kind of looking across. So the min steps is how many steps it should do in that displacement when you're looking down, and the max steps is how many steps it should do when you're kind of looking across it. So again, if I get my material instance up here, then my min steps, just try and sort this out. So if I set my min steps to 4, it won't make a lot of difference, but it'll start to look a bit worse as I'm looking down. I don't know if you can see that, but it's starting to kind of fall apart a little bit here. Let's set it to 1. So that's the difference between 1 there and let's say 8, like that. And then the max steps, like I just said, is when you're kind of more looking across it. So if I set my max steps to 8, it starts to look really, really bad. 64 is kind of okay, 1 to 8 is even better. Now, obviously, you'd think the best thing to do then is just to set this like 256 and set this to 64 or something. But these do have a cost associated with them. So the higher this is, the more expensive the material is. And actually they do start to, this material does start to get very expensive if you go too far. So for now I'm just going to stick for that one with 8 and 128. Oh, and also there's no reason, these don't have to be powers of 2 either. I think that's just force of habit to do that. So you could put min steps of like 3.5 or whatever you want. Or in fact maybe they have to be integers, but you can certainly, it doesn't have to be 2, 4, 8 and so on. Okay, the other thing we're going to want is a scalar value for our amp tiling we should have. So tiling amount, we're going to need to multiply that by texture coordinate so that it's the right kind of data. So this is just a number now that we're going to plug into UVs. and I'll set that to 1 as default, so it'll tile 1 time. And we just need to multiply it by texture coordinates just to turn it into the right kind of data. So rather than just being a number, it's a texture coordinate type of data. Okay, so that's everything that needs to go into there. The other thing that I want to do is I want a texture for my the pattern that's going to be over this. So this kind of spotty circle pattern. So I've just grabbed a load of these off the internet. What you want ideally is patterns that don't really have any texture in them. So you don't want a picture of a rug to use for this. You just want just some kind of really simple graphics, because the texture, the normal map and stuff that we're generating will do the rest of that work for you. So let's just grab one of these so we've got something in there. I'll just use that one in fact. And what I'm going to do is, so that I can change this in my material instance, I'm going to convert that to a parameter, and I'm going to call it pattern. Okay, so that's going to plug into base color. Before I do that, though, I'm going to multiply it by the AO, or the height map that we made. So what I'll do is I'll get the height map, and I'm going to make a new scalar parameter, and I'm going to call this one height map diffuse or something like that. So this is going to add a little bit of this into there. I'm then going to add those together. So I'll add a bit of this texture into here. In fact, now I'm going to do that a different way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add. So let me just preview this so we can see what's going on. I'll just give that value of 1. Okay, so that's that texture. What I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm going to add a bit onto that, in fact. Let's add a bit onto it. What I want to do is try and get rid of some of the black, so I'll just add 1 onto it like that. In fact, let's add on something like 0.5, and then I'll multiply that by my diffuse texture. So as I turn this, if I turn this down to 0, I've mostly just got my diffuse texture. I turn this up to 1, and I get quite a lot of that in there. So I've got like a little parameter to kind of add a bit of that in. I just find that quite useful for this. Like once you come a fair distance away from the rug, you can start to lose the sort of textured look of it. So I'll just plug a little bit into the diffuse. Okay, so that all goes into base color. I'm also going to make something so I can scale my normal map up and down. So what I'm going to do is I just want to multiply my normal map so I can make it more or less powerful. What I want to do though is I don't want to multiply the blue channel, as that'll just kind of undo everything I've done. So I'm going to make a couple of multiplies and a scalar value again. So holding down S, and this is going to be normal amount, or normal strength might be a better term. Let's plug that into there and there, set the default value of that to 1 so it won't do anything at all. And then I need to make that back into a float 3. So my red channel's been multiplied, my green channel's been multiplied, and the blue channel I just plug straight in to Z. Okay, that's my normal map. My ambient occlusion now I can do. So my AO, I'm going to do another multiply. I'm going to make another scalar value. This is going to be AO amount. And in fact, I'm not going to use a multiply. Instead, I'm going to use a power mode. So this will just exponentially increase it. So my AO is in the red channel. I can go into base. AO amount goes into the exponential. So at the moment, this won't be doing anything. It'll just be kind of nothing. But if I start to turn that up, then I'll get some AO. Oh, sorry, it's not that red channel I want, it's that red channel I want. So let's plug that into AO. What else? Metallic is 0, it would be 0 by default, but we can just plug 0 into that to be sure. I do find, whenever I do fabric, I always find the spatula is a little high, so although you should be able to leave this as default really and just mess with your roughness, I do think it's quite useful actually to have a bit of an override for the spatula. So we'll set that as 0.5 as the default, which is the default. So our roughness map was in our green channel, and what I'll do for this is I'll use an add node, a new scalar parameter that's called roughness, and this will just allow us to kind of scale our roughness up and down. So if I preview that, if I bring this to a negative value, then it will get a bit shinier. And if I bring it to a positive value, it'll get a bit rougher. We still kind of keep the variation in it. So that goes into roughness. What else do we need? Okay, I think we're pretty much there now. Let's just save that. So all we need to do is, obviously this parallax stuff at the moment, it's not doing anything. We need to actually plug it in. So the ones that we're going to be using are parallax UVs. These go into the UVs for our texture samples. We'll need to use this offset only as well because we want to have a different tiling for our pattern. I'll explain that in a bit. And we also need the pixel depth offset, which will actually kind of make it bump in and out. So pixel depth offset goes straight into pixel depth offset there. Right, anything that is going to tile the same as what I set up here, we can use this parallax UVs. So my normal map is going to tile up in tandem with this because it kind of matches up with it, and so is my roughness map and my AO as well. However, this pattern here isn't. We want to be able to tile this differently to this. So if we tile our bumps up like 5 times over the rug, we don't necessarily want to tile our pattern 5 times as well. We'd like to control those independently. So I'm going to need something to do that with. So let's have a new scalar parameter and call this pattern tiling, and another texture coordinate to make it into the right kind of data. I'll just set the default value of that to 1. So let's multiply those. Okay, so I want that plugged into here. However, I need it to look as though it's moving with the parallax effect as well. So I also kind of need to plug this into there. Now if I plug offset only into here, we'll get some really weird effects. In fact, I'll do it. I'll just stop previewing this. So this is what in fact you can see at the moment what we've got. Kind of looks alright, but you can see my diffuse texture is not moving. So this texture isn't moving with the parallax occlusion mapping, so it looks really weird. So yeah, I can plug this into here, but now this will tile with this. So if I turn this up to 3, they'll both tile together. I didn't want my pattern to tile with it. I wanted to tile it independently. So actually I'll leave that set as 3 as the default. Right, so what we need to use is this offset only. Now, you can't just plug the offset only into there because you need to multiply it. It does actually tell you how to do it if you hold. It's a bit cryptic, but it does tell you what to do. So it says you need to multiply the offset by the tiling ratio between the surfaces. So if the height map had a tiling of 1, so let's set our height map to have a tiling of 1, and the overlay detail had a tiling of 8, let's set that to 8. And then it says you need to multiply this offset value by 8 before adding it to the UVs of detail texture. So if we need to multiply that by 8, the ratio it's looking for between this, which is 8, and this, which is 1, would be 8 divided by 1, which would be 8. So let's do that. Let's put in a divide node, and let's divide 8 by 1. I can set these to wherever I want now, so that can be 3 and that can be 1. Now it says you need to multiply this offset by this. So let's do that. Let's multiply this number we made by the offset only. And it says you do that, so multiply it before adding it to the UVs. Then we need to add to the UV tiling amount for this pattern to this, and then we plug all that into UVs, and that should work. So now we can see we've got everything kind of moving in tandem. I can change my parameter in here to make the pattern bigger or smaller, and it all kind of stays stuck together. And changing this isn't changing the tessellation, the parallax down here, so I can control those two things independently. So let's just set that to 1 because I think that's what we're going to need. Okay, that should be our material all set up. So let's save that. I'll move that off to one side, and what I'm going to do is create a material instance of that, and I'll just stick that on this rug. Okay, so let's just have a look at our material instance now. Obviously this is looking a bit shiny and horrible. Let's see what we can do. So first of all, let's sort out that shininess. So we're going to want the roughness and specular for that. I think I'm going to bring the spec down a bit, and we have to bring the roughness up as well. So that looks better. I want a bit of spec in there. Looks good. Okay, so we can control the height with height. More bumpy, less bumpy. So that maybe 0.03. The other thing that I might want to do is use these steps. You can see I'm getting some kind of weird flashing in there. Let's increase the max steps up a bit until that goes away, and maybe min steps as well. To be honest, I'm not seeing much difference between 64 and 128 actually, so let's leave that 64. and that can be left at 4 as well. So what else have we got in here? We've got, we can add a bit of that diffuse into the, just make that bigger. We can add a bit of the sort of the height map as an image into our diffuse, so you can see what that does. Probably easy to see if I come out a bit. So if I turn it right up, you can see it just kind of adds to the look of that. So I'll have a bit of that. We'll have some AO. Around there, I can see where my normal map looks better, maybe turned up a bit. I can change the tiling amount for my pattern. You can see again, it's not altering that height map, it's just the pattern that's changing. I can also change the tiling amount for my actual height map. So I can make it a more kind of tightly knit rug like that. The other thing I can do is I can tick pattern, and then I can just, I've got a load of patterns here, so I can plug in a different pattern and try that. Let's just make sure my pattern tiling is set to 1. So a bit more tweaking of the values, I think, but that is it. So I hope that helped, and I hope that explained, mainly it explained how you use this parallax occlusion mapping. So it kind of looks complicated, but it's not really that complex once you break it down.